Hello and welcome to another edition of Gold Bazan. Today we're joined by Omid Namazi, former Team Melli assistant coach who worked alongside Carlos Queiroz from 2011 up until leading Iran to the qualification for the 2014 FIFA World Cup. Omid Namazi currently is an assistant coach of the United States men's national under-20 football team. And also on the show we're going to have Babak Godriz, regular panelists from Gold Bazan that you've heard numerous of times on our pods. And looking forward to it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Right now we have Babak Godriz and Omid Namazi on the pod. How are you guys doing today?
Good, thank you. Good to be on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you, Basha. It's good to be part of it.
Appreciate it. Mr. Namazi, the first question I have for you, you were Team Melli's assistant coach for 3 years. How was it working with Carlos Queiroz and the players, and what did you learn from Carlos Queiroz?
Working with Carlos was obviously a great experience. He's one of the top coaches in the world and has been to some of the biggest clubs in the world, working there as assistant coach, head coach, as well as some very well-known national teams such as Portugal, South Africa, and has had a lot of success and brings a lot of experience to the table. And I think I tried to be a help to him over the 3 years and try to learn as much as possible from him. As far as what I learned from him, I would say you try to pick up something from every corner of the coaching department, so to say. But the main thing I thought I learned from him is how disciplined the team needs to be in order to be successful, and I think you see signs of it with his work with the Iranian national team.
Right.
Mr. Namazi, is about your recruitment to be selected as one of his assistant coaches. How did that go about?
Well, I was working in Iran with Steel Azin, one of the clubs that since has been defunct. And I was under a 6-month contract. At the end of the 6 months, I think it was in the 5th month, was when Carlos Queiroz was hired as the national team coach. And along with him came Dan Gaspar. And I had known both Gaspar and Carlos because I played for them with the New York, New Jersey Metro Stars in the MLS, in the inauguration season of the MLS. So there was a little bit of background with us, and I remember I actually called Dan Gaspar to talk to him about bringing on an assistant coach that was interested in coaching the national team, an Iranian guy. I can't really mention the name, but that's when Gaspar actually asked me what I was doing, and once I told him that I was working there with Steel Azin and my contract was coming to an end and I had every intention to return to the United States, he asked me whether I would be interested in staying on as one of the assistant coaches with Carlos Queiroz and working for qualification to the 2014 World Cup. And we had a couple meetings that included, again, Carlos, myself, Dan Gaspar, and Antonio Simoes. And after 2 meetings, I decided that I was going to stay and work with Carlos. I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to learn from one of the best and also do something for my country. And it was an honor to do it.
You know, speaking about Carlos Queiroz right now, did he have any role in our younger sides in the national team, either that be under 23 or U19?
Did he have any role?
Yeah.
No, Carlos is a main concentration, and he always said it, was a senior national team. He would try to help advise maybe some of the younger teams, but he never directly did anything with them. He always said, my job is to qualify the team for the World Cup, and that's what I'm going to put all my effort and concentration in.
Right.
one of the cornerstones of, let's say, Carlos Queiroz's reign, which included your presence, was, especially in that time when you were there, was trying to recruit foreign-based Iranians like yourself into the national team. A lot of players were named. People like Ashkan Dejaga represented the country. We have Reza Guchani-Nejad, who's also been a success, and others like Stephen Beitashour and Nazari, who was one of the first ones who came about. How did this process go about?
When Carlos was hired and when I came on board, basically we put a list of players that had any Iranian ties, whether it was through parents or through birth, that were playing abroad. And I remember there was a list of 24 to 25 players, and we sort of went one by one through the list and tried to figure out which players were most valuable to us and could be an asset to the national team and could raise the level of the national team. So we started ranking them, and then once we ranked them, we started making the calls and getting in contact with these players. You know, players that you mentioned, such as Ashkan, such as Uchan-Nejad, Omid Namazi, and also Beitashour were part of that process. And I thought, even though there was a lot of opposition within the football community in Iran, I thought it was one of the best things we did because, as you can see, now you have Ashkan Dejaga playing for the national team, and he could be there for another 5-6 years playing at a very high level. Uchan-Nejad is a goal scorer, and he scored the big goal that got us qualified for the 2014 World Cup. So I think had we just went out and gotten one player, we would have done our job. But we were able to bring in, like I said, Uchan-Nejad and Dejaga, and then Beitashour, which I still think has a place on that team if given the chance. But again, our whole aim was to raise the level of the national team with some international experience.
Yeah, we have a. Go ahead, Babak.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's going to be one of the lasting legacies of this era, this reign of Queiroz, which, again, you were part of and instrumental in. And was there any specific player that you guys wanted to get, but for whatever reason couldn't get, and you regret that, maybe?
Well, there was a player by the name of Atashkadeh who plays in Sweden. I can't recall the club name right now, but he was one that we actually brought into a camp. He sort of at the time was injured, but was able to train a little bit with the team towards the end of that camp, and we thought he would be an asset. He was a speedy forward, a player that could stretch the other team's defense with his pace. But for whatever reason, he decided that the timing wasn't right, that he did not want to accept our call for the national team and for that qualification process. So that's one that I think would have probably helped. I'm not sure. I haven't followed his career since. I'm not sure where he is or what he's doing, but William Atashkadeh was his name.
We have a question from Twitter from @1THouseSelf, and his question to you is, Mr. Namazi, who was the most talented player you coached while in Iran?
It's a good question. As you know, there's plenty of talent in Iran. I always said, if you go through the villages and through the streets and through the football community, you can find a lot of talent. That talent needs to be nurtured, but there's a lot of it in Iran, and the day somebody decides to work with this talent, I think we can see our football grow to become a international force. But as far as individuals on Team Melli that I worked with personally, and I thought they were very talented, I would say the one guy that stands out in my mind is Karim Ansari-Fat. I think this guy is a natural goal scorer. He has all the elements to be a top scorer at the highest level. But he needs work. He needs an opportunity and also some coaching. But I thought, his finishing ability around the goal, his awareness, his sense of being in the right place at the right time was always at the top.
He seems a little bit like a confidence player. In one game, he looks like he could, like you said, looks like he can score at any level. He scored a goal once, I think it was against South Korea in the Asian Cup. And then in another game, he looks like he couldn't hit the target if he was 6 yards out. Do you think there's let's say, a confidence or mental aspect to it that has prevented him from reaching his potential?
There could be some of that. And I think that goes with every player. When a player is riding high in confidence, he could close his eyes and score the goals. And at the same time, when the confidence is not there, he could miss some obvious chances. I think more than that with Karim, it was a matter of work rate. For one, we thought his work rate needed to be higher, and then his awareness, where to make the runs, how to get open. But his instincts were what really stood out, and he had those. Just needed to be coached and nurtured a little bit. But I think if he gets a good run somewhere, as you saw in Persepolis when he played there, and with Saipa when he was the guy they were looking for, and he had a good run of many games back to back to back. He always showed that he can score, and he could be one of the top scorers in the country. I believe with Persepolis, he was the top scorer in the league. Maybe it was with Saipa, I can't recall. But I remember one year he was the top scorer, and I think he can do that every year. He just needs to get a good run, get some confidence, like you said. But he's got all the elements. He's got the tools. He's got good size, good speed, good technical ability, and a great finishing touch.
My next question, Mr. Namazi, is, there's always problems lying around in our football, and one of our regular panelists definitely wanted me to ask you this, Mohamed Jadi, and his question to you was, where do you think the biggest problem lies in our football?
Oh, boy. There's so many problems, and you can't just pinpoint one.
Right.
But if I was to say why we can't make it to the next level as an international team, I would say is the work that's being put in place for the younger players. You look at all the Premier League teams. I think there's one or two. Maybe I can name Sepahan and Foulad, and to a certain extent Zobahan, who really concentrate on their academies and nurturing the younger players. But outside of that, you don't see a lot of work, academic work, or a lot of educated work with these younger players to really hone their skills and really nurture what God's given them, and that's the natural talent. So I think that's where we fail. A lot of money is being spent in the Premier League to buy players, transfer players, pay the coaches. Yet very little is being spent at the youth level, and I think that's where we fail.
Did you guys at Team Melli staff encourage these younger players to make a move abroad, like people like Sardar Azmoun, Queiroz, These are guys who, unlike the generation before them, they moved and took that risk to move abroad and develop themselves when they were still teenagers. Did the Team Melli staff have anything to do with communication with certain players?
Absolutely. There was always that encouragement from our side for players to make the jump abroad and be in a professional environment and getting that proper training day in and day out. The issue was that for many reasons, players decided to stay in Iran because they had a comfortable life, they were getting paid good money, and there were celebrities in the country, and that would have been different if somebody had decided to go, for example, to the German second division and play there. You're an unknown commodity, you got to prove yourself. So it was always a battle, and that battle was taking the easy route and staying in Iran, or going abroad and proving yourself and making something out of yourself. A good example is Ali Reza Jahanbakhsh, who has now proven himself as a commodity where teams in Holland, such as Alkmaar, now comes in and signs him from his previous team. So it's all about. I think at the same time, with us encouraging the players, it's about the players' mentality themselves. If they are after improvement, if they're after getting to a higher place, they'll go and do it. Sardar Azmoun did it. He went abroad. Ali Reza Hayri, the goalkeeper, did it. There are others who had the opportunity who didn't take advantage of it. So, again, it's the upbringing, it's the culture, and then it's a decision to make something better of themselves.
You mentioned Ali Reza Hayri. Just briefly, were you surprised that he was named as the number 1 goalkeeper for the World Cup?
I was a little surprised. However, I know working with Dan Gaspar, I remember he was always very high on Ali Reza, and I think it was a matter of time where Ali Reza would become the starting goalkeeper just because of his size, his athletic ability. If he was able to, minimize his mistakes within the frame, he was always going to be one that was going to be looked at as a starter. And with Rahmati not being there, I think that opened the door for him to be the starter. And I was a little surprised because Rahman Ahmadi had been the starter in the qualifications and had done well. But at the same time, I think Ali Reza had showed signs that he could be a top keeper, and I felt he did a very good job in the World Cup.
Speaking of which, about the World Cup, what were your thoughts on how we did in the World Cup? Were you surprised, unsurprised, especially the match against Argentina, that we basically could have won that match? But what are your thoughts on it?
I think overall, if you look at the whole picture and our performance in the World Cup, you can't say that it was a very successful campaign. However, I have always said it. When you have certain tools in your hands, you can do certain things. When you don't have it, you can't. What Queiroz was handed, I think he did the best job he could under the circumstances and with the tools he had. I mean, taking Argentina to the 92nd minute and not giving up a goal and having actually chances to win that game was a phenomenal job done by Carlos Queiroz and his vision and tactics. But then when you think about the whole thing, you get 1 point out of 3 games and you finish last in your group. So you can't say it was a very successful results-wise. But when you look at the performances, they had some good performances. I thought against Argentina, they were very good. Against Nigeria, they were good, but they could have actually won that game. And then they had the letdown with the last game when they needed to really come out and try to go for a win. So that's my view on the whole thing. I think Carlos did the best he could with the players he had. And that's the story of our football. We're not there yet. We're not a team that can expect to come out of its group, no matter what the group is. We got to keep working, and it takes a lot of years to become that consistent force and proving yourself that you can get out of your group whenever you get to the World Cup.
You mentioned Carlos Queiroz's vision and tactics. That's a good point, and I just want to take you back a little bit before the World Cup, when there was doubt over whether we would qualify. We came at a crossroads where we had games against Lebanon, Qatar, and Korea in a very short period of time. And before that, we had tried to take the game to our opponents, so to speak, and we had mixed results. But there seemed to be a tactical shift at that point, and Queiroz decided to put the team a little bit more defensively minded and play on the counter. I don't know if that there was something more, let's say, concrete to that, or that's how it seemed to us watching on. And since then, the team has been far more defensive and playing on the counter attack. Was this a conscious decision?
I think so. I think the whole idea behind the way the team is playing right now is basically to try to take away the other team's strengths and play to our strengths, which is if we can defend in numbers, we're going to be a lot more successful. If we defend, on an island, so to say, meaning, you spread yourself thin and you try to only defend with your back four, I think you're going to run into trouble, because history tells you that, in Iran, we don't have the best back line, or we don't have the best one-on-one defenders. We lack some pace at the back line. So how do you compromise for that? So you come and you try to defend in numbers, as they did against Argentina. A player like Messi had very few opportunities to be able to penetrate, and that's from that tactic where you bring back and you play with numbers behind the ball and you try to take away the spaces in your defensive third. So I think Carlos's vision is whenever we play against an inferior team, and you can tell who an inferior team is. When you play Lebanon, they're an inferior team to us. So we need to go on the attack. We need to press high. We need to keep possession. All the things that an attacking team does. And, obviously you're going to come out with the results. But then when you play against a Korea that's probably superior to us, then you got to think a little bit more defensively. And that's what Queiroz is doing. He's getting his team to believe that this style of play, where you sit behind the ball, you take away the space, and then you pick and choose your times to go forward and to get on the counter. He tries to get his players to believe that, and I think they had a strong belief going into the World Cup that style and that philosophy is going to help them win games.
Why do you think we find it so difficult to break down opponents? It's been, I would say, over the last decade, more or less, since the peak of the 2002 team passed and going on towards 2006. Since then, almost 10 years, we're finding it very difficult to break down teams. Is it a lack of technical players? Is it something deeper? Because we're even now, after when we had the Asian Cup, we looked more successful on a defense, even against the UAE and Qatar and Bahrain. We looked like we were happy to hand over possession to the opponents. What do you think this is about?
Yeah, I was surprised with that in the Asian Cup, how defensively minded the team was. My own view on it is that, again, against teams like UAE, although UAE is a very good team now and you got to be careful with them, but teams like Bahrain, teams like Iraq even, we need to impose ourselves on the opposition. And I was surprised to see us play so defensively and give up that possession battle. But, you have a head coach in place. He has a certain view on the game, and he makes the decisions. But I think the reason you see that we have a hard time, I really believe it comes down to our players and the quality of players that we develop. I mean, you look at the league in Iran, and the quality of play in that league is very poor from top to bottom. And, when you have players playing in that league and being developed in that league, it's a slow-paced game. It's a game that has a lot of stop and go with faking injuries and so forth. And it's just not a good environment for players to get ready for international competition. That's why there was always that encouragement for players to go abroad and try to get contracts overseas, especially in Europe, where the game is a little bit faster. The training environment is a lot more competitive day in and day out, and it prepares the players for that international competition.
We have another question from Twitter from @N1MB, and his basically question is that how can someone make it to the Team Melli from a foreign country, how could they basically get a trial?
I mean, it's an open question. Mm-hmm. Is this player playing somewhere?
Yeah,
somewhere?
Assuming so. That's just a basic question you give. Assuming that it's a player and he wants basically a trial. How do you guys going about trying to?
There's really no open trials for the national team. The player has to be seen. The player has to be noticed where he plays domestically. Let's say a player is playing in Europe. If he's playing at the top level, obviously the national team staff will hear from him, will know about him. If he's playing in the second tier, again, his performances are going to be put under microscope and seen. And at the end of the day, the national team staff decides whether that's an asset that could help the national team raise its level. But you can't just think you're playing somewhere. Let's say a kid's playing here in the U.S. He has an Iranian background, and he thinks he's going to get picked up by the national team. It just doesn't work that way.
We just spoke about youngsters, and now I wanted to just take you back about a couple of the more older guard that we had, of which one is retired, Nekunam. How was it working with Javad Nekunam and Andranik Teimourian, who can easily go down as two of the best players we've ever produced?
It was a joy working with those guys because, obviously both of them had played abroad. They knew what it takes to be successful in international competition. They had been on the national team for a long time. Some of the veterans on the team, in both of them, especially Javad, was a true leader on and off the field. I mean, the players looked up to him. He directed the team within the confines of the game itself. And Ando, with his exuberance, his tenacity, his willingness to do whatever it takes to win games, they set an example for the rest of the players, which made, when you have players like that on the field, it makes the coach's job a lot easier. So it was a joy to work with them.
You left the job that you had with the national team, and you went on to coach the U.S. women's national team, and then you moved on now to work with one of the, let's say, greatest American football players of all time, Tab Ramos, with the under-20 men's team. So how has that move been, and what are your plans going forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, very proud of the work I put in for 3 years. A lot of things have been said by a lot of different people in Iran, but I know what my role was. I know what I did, and I'm proud of the work I put in. But it was time at that time, after we qualified, and under the circumstances, and I put that in quotation, under the circumstances, it was the best time for me to move on. And being very honest, I had an offer from the U.S. Soccer Federation to join the women's national team as an assistant coach. And I knew at the end of the day, before the World Cup or after the World Cup, I was going to come back to the United States to be with my family and continue my coaching career here. So when that offer or that opportunity presented itself, I couldn't turn my back to it. I took it. And now working with the U.S. under-20 men's national team, having just played in the World Cup and going through that experience, it's been great. Tab is a good friend. We played against each other many years back, and we always kept in touch and have a good relationship. So that's going really well, and we'll see. I have a contract through the end of the year with the federation. I think there's some talk about using me as a head coach of some of the other youth teams. Nothing concrete right now, but I know there's discussion going on. So I will continue to work with TAB through this year, and then hopefully, be able to lead one of the other youth teams myself, and also be an assistant to TAB going forward.
Do you see yourself more comfortable or more at home in the coaching the youngsters and youth teams, or do you have ambitions to be the head coach at a senior team, be it national or club?
No, I definitely have ambitions to coach at the highest level with senior players. Good thing about myself, and something I'm proud of, is that my body of work is pretty vast. It covers a lot. It covers indoor soccer, outdoor soccer, women, youth, senior. I've done it all, and I think I'm comfortable in every situation, but obviously my ambitions are to coach at the highest level I can, and hopefully that day will come soon.
Just finally, before we end this interview, I wanted to see, do you see yourself playing a role, let's say, contributing to Iranian football again in the future?
Not in the short term. I left with I would say with a not so good view of football in Iran and the way it's being played out. I think the opportunity to be successful in Iran is not great, and I will explain what I'm saying here. You could be a top coach, you could be one of the best coaches in the world, and yet there are some circumstances in Iran that would stop you from being successful. I've had some offers, some opportunities to go and be a head coach at the club level, but I've decided to not accept or to say no to them because, again, I don't believe that the environment helps you in what you want to do. I have a good history in my coaching career. I can say that I've been successful at every stop of my coaching career, whether, again, it's indoors, women, a senior national team, or now with the youth national team in the U.S. But that success and that history does not bode well when you try to work in an environment where there are elements that stop you from being successful. And without going into details, I would say unless the atmosphere and the conditions of Iranian football changes, I don't see myself being able to work in that environment. Just does not fit. The two don't fit together.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Namazi. Do you have any message for Iranian football fans who are following Team Melli on Golbazan and they're hopefully looking forward us qualifying for the 2018 World Cup?
No, just that I wish Team Melli, its fans, the best of luck in trying to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. I can say, despite whatever was said or happened when I left the Iranian team, I think Queiroz is the best candidate for the job, and they need to get behind him and support him and give him the tools to succeed. And I think if they do that, we'll see our team in the 2018 World Cup again.
I appreciate you coming on, Mr. Namazi, and thank you, Babak. Godig did a fantastic job. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Pasha.